This is Pod Populi, podcasts for the people.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional medical advice or be a substitute for therapy. Please contact a mental health professional as needed. If you are in need of urgent or emergency health care, please contact your medical and/or mental health provider, call 911, or go to your nearest emergency room. The information presented in this podcast does not reflect the opinions of those with whom Dr. Ellick might be affiliated as an employee, consultant, or colleague, past or present. Welcome to another episode of From Mayhem to Mindset with Dr. Laura. I am your host, Dr. Laura Ellick, and I have a guest with me today who does not need any introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. This is Ellick Bricker, licensed mental health counselor. You have some other initials after your name, which I guess we'll get into, right? But Ellick, we travel in the same circles. Everybody in the mental health profession around here travels in the same circles. But I know that Ellick specializes in addiction because you're in South Florida, so everyone does that. Anger management, grief. Do you do work with prolonged grief? That's sort of a new disorder.
I do. I actually presented on that recently. Grief and loss, traumatic grief, complicated grief, prolonged grief, like the intersection of traumas and grief. I work with a lot of people who've had those kinds of experiences.
So one of the things that's really cool about having Ellick here is, first of all, it's great to talk to another therapist.
Thank you.
Love it. Second of all, he is a podcast host, the Good Counsel.
Yes, that's right.
So where did that name come from?
You know, I'm not really sure. I think I was just kind of workshopping names, and I remember just hearing it somewhere, like, this is Good Counsel, or that you should listen to this person or that person because that's good counsel. And I was like, okay, if I'm doing a podcast about behavioral health, maybe we call it the Good Counsel podcast, because these are all people who are helping somebody in one form or another. So I just liked the name, and it worked for me. So
it flows.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought when I first heard it, this was before you and I knew each other, was I thought that it was a lawyer podcast.
That could be. There was actually, I was looking, when I came up with the name, I was doing an internet
right,
search
you have
on
to
it,
check, yeah,
just to make sure there wasn't another Good Counsel podcast, and there was some other Good Counsel something or other. And what I found out was that it was actually a branding for big and tall, like, men's fashion line. It was called like Good Counsel. Yeah, it was like Good Counsel jeans.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So I figured those guys wouldn't be too worried.
Yeah.
Those guys wouldn't be too worried.
And you're going to give some buzz to their jeans.
Yeah,
so.
That's right. So, shout out to the Good Counsel jeans folks. But there was but anything related to podcasts that had any of that sort of title in it, it was like Christian or religious based. There was some Good Counsel something, but not quite that title. So I wasn't stepping on anybody. So I know that it's definitely some phrasing that shows up in other places.
That's pretty cool. So what made you decide to do a podcast? That's a question that people ask me all the time. And so I'm really curious if anyone else is as, like, crazy as I am to kind of jump into this world.
So mine has a really specific origin, which is that I was always a fan of the long form interview. I was a big fan of Howard Stern's, and when you listen to somebody like that, beyond the wacky, the shock jock stuff, it's actually the tone and the quality of his interviews. People that weren't really interesting to me at all, they would become interesting when they would be on there, and you would contrast that with maybe an interview you saw the same person on the E! channel or something, and it's not even comparable, right? Just the level of depth and the nuance and his interest into these small things that make the person who they are. And you really get a sense that you know these people. And I started really kind of tracking that style of interviewing. And I would be listening to these shows on my commute, fantasizing, like, I would love to be able to have a show where I was interviewing people like this. And that goes all the way back into the, like the 90s where that was happening. So once podcasts started and I started listening to those, I started thinking to myself, okay, this just got one step closer to me fulfilling this sort of fantasy dream thing that I had. And I had a friend who was doing it, and he kind of broke down the mechanics of it, like how it works. And I knew it was something I wouldn't just be able to do. He figured it all out himself. I didn't have those technical skills, but I figured I was motivated enough that I would learn them. And so we spent a lot of time together. I actually paid him for his time, kind of hired him as a consultant. He walked. His name is Tom Gentry. I don't know. You might know him.
The name sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, he's behavioral health. He's a life coach, and he's done a lot of marketing type work. So he started it, and he recorded his own episodes. He helped me shop my equipment. How to use the Audacity program to record the audio, how to edit it myself, how to run it through a compressor so that it sounds right, how to upload it to a hosting site. And we worked on this together until I was completely self-sufficient. And now I can record episodes, I can edit them, I can upload them, I can, do everything I need to do with them.
Oh. So you're a one-man show.
Yeah, for now. I'm shopping the idea of moving into a video format, and that'll probably be next. I want to give that a try, but I've gotten very comfortable with the audio and doing all that stuff myself.
How long did it take you to get proficient in that?
Months.
Yeah.
If I go back and I listen to the first couple that I did, I mean they're not that great, and I'd let them run forever, so they'd be like an hour and a half. I'd be sifting through an hour and a half of footage that I could have recorded better had I done certain things, like adjusted the volumes on the microphones, things like that. But you live and you learn, and now the quality of them is really good, and I know how to coach people when I'm interviewing them about what to do and what not to do. And when you look at the waves, the audio waves of the sound, you can almost see different signatures in the sound of where, okay, that's his track, but they're picking up my microphone, so I could just scrub that out. I don't even have to listen to it to know. That's just background noise for me, and I'll scrub that out. Or if someone has a vocal tick, like they say, or something like that in the same spot, you'll almost see it at different interviews, and you could just kind of scrub that out. So I learned how to clean it up more efficiently and just got better at it. It's a relatively simple program to use. I think Audacity is like the most basic, but it's 2 channels, and so it was perfect. It's 2 channels through an interface onto any PC type computer, so it was perfect for me.
I think, my influence, same as you, Howard Stern is a phenomenal interviewer.
Are you a fan?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I grew up in New York in the 90s, like everybody listened to Howard Stern. As controversial as he was, if you actually got down and listened to his interviewing style, he's got a great style. And I often wonder, because he's spoken openly about his OCD, I wonder if his OCD is what makes him so good at picking up the nuances in people. He just asks the pointed questions because his brain is so detail-oriented.
So this is the thing that I picked up, because, you listen to hours of it. It was a tool for learning to be a better therapist, like being a good interviewer. And the thing that I learned from listening to him was, like you said, the nuance and paying attention to detail. And it was his interest in the small details of people's lives, things that most folks would just overlook as superfluous and unimportant, that he would ask about the questions, and it's like, you have to go to Whole Foods to get that? Like, why are you going to a store that's 10 miles out of your way? Because they have this brand of snack bar. Well, what's the difference between that and some other snack bar? Like, what? Well, this one has this. And he's like, oh, so almond flour is better than, regular flour? I mean, and that's just a made-up example, but he would delve into those kind of details, and it really gave you a window into how people thought and how they operated in their lives. And it allowed you to get to know people in a different way. And in therapy, I ask those kinds of questions when I pick up on any kind of like habit that people have, or sort of just a thing that they do that's quirky or unusual. And then you find it becomes a whole window into what their day-to-day life is like. And you can almost visualize yourself following them around in their day and watching them live in a way that's different than if someone's just describing to you like a problem that they have.
Right. If you just ask the right question or make a comment in the right way, someone will open up and you'll get so much information that you never knew was even possible.
It helps move the conversation along too in a in a particular way, because when you're asking about these small details and you're demonstrating interest in really sort of knowing how the person operates, people like talking about those things. People like talking about their little habit of like why I wipe the dashboard of my car clean all the time, because I don't like the look of fingerprints and dust, and I have to do it every time I get in the car. And I like to be able to see the the dial on the radio, like the display on the radio. I want it to be clean every time, so I do that. And it's like, oh, okay. Not everybody does that. And when did that become important to you? Well, my dad was a neat freak about his car, and we couldn't eat any food in the car. And you just find out, it just leads into people's habits, and you just get to know them better. And I learned all of that from listening to him. So I just find the process of interviewing people fascinating. And so when it came to podcasts, the barrier to entry is really low. Like anybody can do it. So once that happened, I started to see like I could be interviewing people. So the thought about the Good Counsel podcast was, I listened to Joe Rogan, is another really great interview.
3 hours.
Yeah.
3 hours. And defenses break down after about 45 minutes. So if anybody can go on his show for 3 hours, that's amazing.
Well, and it's funny too, because inevitably he drags them into his world, which is, do you believe in Sasquatch, and what are your thoughts about aliens and conspiracies? And, everybody has heard something. You may not spend a lot of time on this stuff, but everybody's heard about these things, and you have some thought, and now he's dragging you in to his world. It's like, do you take hallucinogens, and do you believe in aliens, and do you believe in Sasquatch, and what's your workout routine? And I love listening to people talk about those things. But he talked about when he first started with podcasting, and he said, look, I just got together with my friends, and his friends all being these professional, really talented comedians. And I thought to myself, well, I could interview my friends, and my friends are kind of interesting too, because we live in this little Silicon Valley of substance abuse treatment, which produces all of these really wildly talented clinicians and all of these obscure specialties. Like if you were in, I don't know, somewhere in Michigan, you would probably have to go 20 miles to find someone who was like a DBT specialist that maybe specialized in like treating eating disorders with it or something. Here, I could name like 3. And so there were all these different people around who had all these specialties, interventionists, mindfulness coaches, Marchman Act attorneys, just all kinds of different people, therapists of all these different disciplines, and just started bringing them in. And because, like you, I'm a therapist myself, so I'm asking them questions in a professional curiosity of really knowing how they structure cases and how they see people and how they believe, like what they believe is actually helpful. And what I found is that most people who are really talented in a particular discipline, it's because something about that discipline is actually operative in their life or help them overcome something. And because of that, they have like a commitment to it, that it works, and that there's a part of it that will work for other people. And so that became like really the spirit of the podcast, is to really uncover that in people who are helping other people and what it is that they experience that works and why do they believe it works and why is it useful. So I'm looking to capture all of that in this long-term format. But back to the point of the Joe Rogan thing, that was the idea of, okay, these are people I can interview who have something interesting to say. And to me, they're just people that I know or that I've worked with or whatever, but to people who are not part of this world, it's a whole, like, how does a therapist think? Like, what are they thinking about, and what is it like when they're seeing somebody? What are they actually thinking, and how are they applying what they're doing? And, what is the nuance of EMDR as a therapist would explain it when they're talking about a case, and what would that sound like if you're talking to another therapist about it? So I was looking to capture all of that.
That's a really good perspective because I remember when I was training and when I was doing my internship, I had 5 different supervisors. I got so much supervision. It was amazing. And I remember asking my supervisor, how do you know to say that particular phrase at that point in time? Why choose those words? Why didn't you choose these words? Why didn't you say that? Was it an intervention, or was it you were just looking for an innocuous thing to say? And nobody teaches you that. That's like the art of psychotherapy, as well as the science piece, is knowing that everything that you're saying is hopefully moving things along in a particular direction. And I don't think people recognize that. Certainly not the average person who's never been to therapy recognizes that there is, strategy sounds too calculated, but there is an overall plan.
I would say that in the last 3 years that I've been doing this, the 41 episodes that I've done really is the bulk of my continuing education. Because you're learning so much from so many people. And when they're doing these interviews and you're asking them what they're doing that's working, they're giving you their best stuff. And there are ideas or conceptualizations, a lot of which I hadn't considered before or don't know about, but you hear someone say something and you think about it for a while and you're like, wow, that's kind of brilliant. How did I go this long of, 30 years of working with people and I didn't ever hear that before. So I think part of it too, I think what makes us effective doing this is that you have a learner's mindset, that you're always wanting to take in, like that you're genuinely interested in people and that you're not looking at this as an opportunity where it's solely about like some self-promotional.
Right, you have to be
thing.
Curious.
Yeah, genuinely interested in what's going on with other people.
So you were as far back as you can say in the 90s, you wanted to do this because you wanted to learn. You wanted to learn about other people.
I just wanted to be Howard Stern. I wanted to do the whole thing. Like I wanted to have the fun. I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to do all of it. But I was also studying to become a therapist at the time. So all of it was just and you're also growing up, right? Like I'm going from being like a college student to a graduate student to finding my way into the world. So it increases like the curiosity about people and about how things work because I'm literally learning how things work.
Right. And how long have you been practicing for?
I got my master's in 96 and I had done some things before that, like at the undergraduate level. And I got my master's in 96 and I became licensed probably around like 98 or somewhere around there.
We're going to talk a little bit more about how the field of therapy has changed after this break. Okay, so we're back. So in your mind, how has the field of psychotherapy changed? Because you got involved in the field in the 90s, just as managed care was really starting to get a hold on the healthcare system. So I don't know if it was like this for you, going to school thinking that there was going to be one way of practicing, and then by the time you got out of school, the entire system had changed.
I think it's changed on a lot of different levels, and I think we work in a field that evolves as our culture evolves. And I think it's constantly evolving. And so when you talk about the changes, I think it's very different from what it was. I think part of that is due to the community's awareness of mental health and how it's viewed. When I was growing up, so I'll tell you like a side story. I ran into a client recently, and this was an individual who was not like a kid, but very much of an adult in public. And this is an adult with a professional job and a professional identity that was taken very seriously.
Like a real person.
Yeah, definitely a fully functioning adult with their own mortgage and the whole thing. And I happened to sort of make that eye contact as we were in the same place at the same time. And, you wait until that person acknowledges. And if that doesn't happen, you go on, because that's sort of like the unwritten rule of confidentiality and public encounters, right? And this person came right up to me and said, "Oh, hi." And they were with a friend. And this is Eric, my therapist. And I could not believe it that this person introduced me to their friend publicly as the therapist.
Blew your mind, right?
Kind of, yeah. And so when you're talking about people in their 20s and what they think about that, it's no big deal. In a way, it would have been a very big deal for me in my 20s to have an encounter like that. I wouldn't have done it. And I was studying to do it, right? I was studying to become a therapist, so I was more open-minded to it. But going in high school, you didn't talk about things like that. And people only went to therapy, or the people I know that went to therapy, is because there were serious problems going on.
Oh, and you had to sneak in and out the back door. You weren't going to tell anybody about that. It's interesting because, with the virtual therapy, I was not a fan of virtual therapy at first. I said, there's no way this is going to work. You can't replicate what's going on in the room. But one of the benefits of going virtual is I have seen adolescents open up their world to me in a way that I never expected. So they will be in their bedroom or wherever, and we'll be talking about something, and they'll say, "Let me show you my prom dress." And they're
Cool.
so excited to be able to share a different part of their world. Or I get to see, oh my gosh, they have bands from the 80s on their wall posters. That's really interesting. And then you find out their father has a big influence on their music. And again, it's questions that might not have come up, but now you have all of this stuff here. Or, hi, here's my dog, and my dog and I cuddle at night. What are your thoughts on the whole virtual thing?
I would say this, and I tell people this when I talk to them, especially if they're over 40. We can do it. I mean, I have access to it, and I'm happy to do it with you. My preference is, if you can, I'd like you to come here in person a few times first. I want you to see me. I want us to see each other. I want us to be in the same room so that you could feel like you really know me in some way, or that we know each other in the same way. And then it's okay. Because at that point it becomes, I almost think of it as like when you're FaceTiming a friend or someone who's known to you. It's just easier to jump in than when you're trying to establish that rapport with a person who is yet a stranger. And that's for people who are over 40. If it's someone in their 20s, it's no problem. I mean,
they're so used to it, right?
So used to. I think certainly COVID very much normalized it, but I think for millennials and younger, we were already heading in the direction of normalizing that. Even the idea of being on Discord chats, like people who game and things like that, they're interacting with groups of people for hours at a time digitally, and it really is tantamount to a gathering of people. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around that, because that's not how I've operated in my life. That's not how I was socialized, but it's different now. That's how people do it.
So what do you think has been the biggest challenge with our younger people, especially coming out of COVID? Are you still seeing the 2-year delay, so to speak, developmentally, or do you think that's being overblown?
Well, I think it's a bunch of things. So one is, there's a real big generational divide in mindset between older adults. The boomers are they're from another planet, right?
Right.
And I'm more of a Gen X person, and as much as I would like to think that I was kind of hip and cool, a lot of my thinking is kind of like outdated. So you're really having to upgrade your software a lot to understand what's going on with the millennials and the Gen Zs and the ways in which they're different. And a lot of the stuff that I pick up from these younger kids, I kind of like it. I think a lot of the way they think about things is actually as a group is kind of cool.
It's refreshing.
It's cool. I especially the Gen Z kids, because they're super cynical. A lot of them like really cynical, and it reminds me of being a Gen X kid, where you just like, you don't trust the adults and they ruined the planet, and you know what I mean? Like it's I know that they're interesting to like some of their perspectives are kind of interesting and surprise me. They have access to a lot of information. A 20-year-old of today they could be very worldly and knowledgeable about all kinds of things without having left their bedroom, which is wild to think about. And they could also be incredibly under-socialized and regressed because they haven't left their bedroom,
It goes both ways, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a different kind of human being. And so to understand the context of the world that they live in, that virtuality and internet and all of that it's a legitimate destination, right? It's a place. So that's a whole part of it. I think that older generations like ours have not really done them any favors. Like we unfortunately haven't really given them a great world to enter into. Like in my day, but when I was coming up, when I was even applying to college, I was a worthless high school student. I mean, I was straight C's and B's. I was a classic underachiever, someone who really wouldn't work up to their potential because my self-esteem was really low. And so I didn't think anything was really worth working for or pursuing. I just didn't, I was apathetic to the whole thing. And smoking a lot of pot too. It helped. It worked, Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're not going to, if your goal is to just not care, that's
the way to do it.
That is the way to go. So even then, as a straight C and B student with, maybe above average SAT scores, I still had a lot of options of colleges to go to. I still could have gone to like UMass, like the state, the good state college where I lived, and a bunch of other private schools that I got into. Still had a lot of choices, more than I would have ever had with the same performance today. So everything is just like harder.
I think so too.
And it's more expensive. So everything is harder and more and less attainable. And the job market too. Like you could be that C/B student. Back in the 90s, you could have been a C/B student. You could have gone to college and been a C/B student there. And you come out with a bachelor's degree, and you may not have been a Fortune 500 guy. You may not have been slated for like the junior executive pathway, but there was going to be a job for you and an opportunity to grow up and to overcome wherever you maybe failed to perform in high school and college. I feel like it's less so now. I feel as though the competition for jobs, the competition for schools, the opportunities, they're less. The cost of housing is so unapproachable. They're saying like now that the median age for first-time buyers is like in your 40s or something. It's insane. So if I'm that age, if I'm in my 20s and I'm in school and you're supposed to be carefree, right? And you're looking down the barrel at, am I ever going to get employed? And if I do get employed, am I ever going to be able to own a home or do any of the things that really are sort of associated with the American dream? And I feel as though all of that's unattainable to me. What am I do? What's the point? And I'm thinking if I was that age, the way that I was, because I was easily discouraged because I didn't really have direction and goals until I found some, and it happened all like very suddenly. I don't know where I would have been. I don't know. I might have just dropped out of the whole program. So I really empathize with these kids, with what they're facing going forward. And then there's all the other stuff that they have to deal with, which is the world of online and online bullying and all of these comparison fears that people have, where you really can get into. You're on Instagram and you're looking at all these people, like it. When I was in high school, if I didn't get invited to something, I just didn't get invited to it. And maybe you'd hear about it on Monday or something, and that's a bummer. I didn't get to go to that. Now you get to kind of like watch everyone else hang out there while you're doing something else or not doing anything else, and it's just terrible. I really feel badly for these young people to have to navigate that.
I think, looking at it, is it any wonder why these kids are cynical or jaded, right? From the very beginning, from kindergarten, they're having lockdown drills, right? They're having, what do we do if somebody, tries to break into our school and shoot us up? And parents are trying the best that they can. They make their little lunches in the bento boxes and all of that, but there's so much that's out of parents' control as well. You drop your kid off and you expect that your child is going to be safe. Then you have all of these competitions and the bullying and the online bullying, and you can't get into a college. And so, you have ninth graders who are looking at their older friends who are really good students getting rejected from all of these schools. I could see the ninth grader being like, why should I bother trying? And then we have the pandemic, and it's just one reason after another how adults have failed this generation. And so what do we do?
Yeah. I don't know.
There's no easy answer, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think if I could have thought of it here, some other person who works on these things probably would have thought of it already. I just I feel for them. It's a rough road going forward, with all the economic instability. I wasn't even thinking about the whole school shooter piece, right? Like that, I would have never. I remember Columbine. And that was back in the 90s?
99, yeah.
Yeah, late 90s. I remember Columbine and the thought that could become normalized, where you have a few of those things every year and it's just something that you deal with. We focus a lot on Parkland because the casualties were high and it's local for us. But these things are going on like all the time. And the fact that it's become normalized and that high school age kids, they just know that, yeah, that's something that could happen here. Someone could come in here with one of our classmates come in with a gun, start shooting up the place. It's just so wild to me that's like our reality today.
And that we have to actually have these conversations with our kids. I walk around neighborhoods. I'm a big walker. I like to, walk. I explore areas. Nobody is outside. Nobody plays outside. Everything has to be organized. And is that because our lives have gotten too busy? Is it that we're too spread out? But it used to just be like all the kids would just meet out in the street and that was enough.
It was. Yeah, I was raised with like no supervision, like none. It was pretty wild.
My parents would lock the door and say, "Stop coming in and out. Stay out."
Yeah, I mean, I was raised with. So I was a latchkey. Both my parents worked, so you get out of school at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and there was no one looking for me before like 6 or something like that. Did you do your homework? Yeah, sure. Working on it now. But yeah, that's how it was, and it's just different. I think a lot of people navigate all of that uncertainty, all that social uncertainty, and all of the threats by imposing a lot of structure. And in some ways, a lot of what folks in our generation might criticize these young people about being overly structured. Well, those are structures that we imposed. It's like it's better to have him or her playing a sport or in the chess club or in the programming club or this club or that group or this place or this, than roaming aimlessly, because roaming aimlessly seems like a very daunting and unsafe thing.
Do you think it's more unsafe nowadays to roam? We were roamers. right? But my kids were always involved in organized sports, and that two of my kids have gone college sports. They both have done lacrosse. That kept them out of trouble in a lot of ways because the coaches were on top of them. They had to be in bed at a certain time because they had to get up for travel lacrosse. Do you think that there's something to be said for having just at least one thing that a child is doing that maybe they feel passionate about to keep them on track?
Well, I think that's always great if you have it. I think a couple of things about that. One, I think that there's a bit of a breakdown of the social fabrics that you might have grown up with if you grew up in the suburbs or you grew up in like a neighborhood in the city where you knew your community and your neighbors. So the street I grew up in Massachusetts, we knew most of those people that lived there. We knew their families, maybe not super well, but I could name like
every single person on the block, right?
Yeah. Whose house it was or whatever. On a couple of different streets, you just sort of knew who the people were. And I think that lent itself to more of that village community sense of your kid's going to be safe wandering around out here because the adults kind of know who the kids are and they're not going to let you, if they see you lighting a Molotov cocktail in the middle of the street, someone's going to intervene about that. Right. Someone's going to, or that's a really insane example, but you know what I'm saying.
But as kids, they always love to light stuff on fire.
I lit so many things on fire.
Of course. That was our science experiment.
I just loved lighting things. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what it says about me, but I liked lighting things on fire. But if you were doing something crazy like that, and one of the adults in the neighborhood saw you, they were going to come out, hey, what are you kids doing? And you'd run away, and then they would go and they'd tell your parents. And so I think there was a certain social contract that made that a little bit safe, that, we're going to do that for you, you're going to do that for us. Where I think that communities tend to be more fragmented and transient now. And I might just be judging based on recency bias because I live in South Florida, which is very transient. We recently moved into a neighborhood that's, there are a lot of original owners in the community and a lot of folks that have lived there for a while. And we've gotten to know some of these neighbors. It's like amazing because we haven't had that the whole time that I've been married and we had like a family unit. We just haven't had that. So it's kind of cool to know the neighbors, and we have dogs, so we know all the other people who have dogs. We walk around in the circles. But I think that kids have grown up. I think that communities are a lot more transient in that way. So the breakdown of that fabric of knowing everyone in the neighborhood, I think that takes away from some of the safety. And to your point, I think that having good structured activities, I think meaningless, mindless structure is, in a way, you're really like robbing someone of the autonomy of figuring out what they like to do. You're like, I don't know what I like to do, but from 4 to 5 o'clock, I
have to do something.
I do this activity, Well, what do you think about flag football? I actually hate it, Well, then why are you going? I don't know. That's where they take me. That, I think, builds like that whole mindset of meaningless structure. I think if a kid demonstrates sort of interest and passion at that thing, and they want to do it, they want to play lacrosse, or they want to be on the chess club, or they want to be in the computer programming club, they want to take jujitsu, or they want to do whatever, that's great. I mean, I think there's no substitute for the value of doing things that are hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So turning it to a little more maybe lighthearted, I don't know. Who are your influences? Who's the music you listen to? Who inspires you? What books do you read? What TV shows are you following? Do you binge watch TV, or you have no time for that?
So it's yes to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So music is a big one. I play. I'm a bass player.
Oh, cool.
And so I like music that features good bass players. So musically, I really like to listen to anyone who's doing anything cool with a bass. Are you familiar with Primus?
Yes.
You are. So Les Claypool. I'm actually going to see them.
Awesome.
Next month. And but like Rush and Geddy Lee, and so all the rock bands. But I like the more of the roots music too. Blues music I like a lot. I listen to a fair amount of that. Jazz music I listen to, and really my favorite is like the jazz fusion type of music. It kind of falls into different genres. I think you probably call it most jazz fusion. Some people call it neo soul. It's different categories. But what do you listen to?
I listen to a wide variety of music, just crazy, from Eminem to classical to Broadway tunes.
Oh, okay. So you really
I'm all over the place.
All over
Yeah, I love music. I
Yeah.
love singing. I'm terrible at it, but I love singing.
I like anything with a good instrumental. So some's jazz fusion, and then it could also be like what jam bands are doing. But it's actually really kind of similar in a way. So things that are good instrumentally, like there's one of the newer bands that does that, and it comes out of that jam band type of genre. They're called Goose, and they're really good long improvisation. So I think they're pretty awesome. A guy by the name of Victor Wooten I like. So Alive, Eric Krasno. I don't even know if you would know.
No, I don't know a lot of these.
Yeah, some of them are a little like obscure.
Yeah.
And there was a cool like local scene of this type of music. There's a band called Guavatron, who they're coming around. I want to see them because they're of that style of with the improvisational groove. Like, it kind of like emanates from disco in a way, but it's disco funk. So I love all that kind of stuff. So that's them. I along the book front, I like Irvin Yalom. So in the therapy realm, I was a big fan of international intrigue and like spy novels, like Nelson DeMille type of stuff. Tom Clancy, I would read. Daniel Silva, like all of these,
all of those, yeah.
The internet, and John le Carre, the guy who really was really the, what do you call it, the godfather of
all of it, right.
all the spy novels. And I love I binge watch any of those. There's a lot of really good TV that's a genre in the streaming world. So I watch a lot of that stuff. The Agency we just watched on Showtime is incredible. Michael Fassbender, it was a great show. Berlin Station on Amazon Prime. What was he? The Recruit on Netflix. Oh, and I'm really excited about Robert De Niro's comeback recently. I'm a big Robert De Niro fan.
He's coming back because he had another kid that he has to support, right?
You know what? That's very funny and probably true. That's so funny. But he's made like a lot of really bad movies in the last 15 years. And he was in this incredible series on Netflix. It didn't really get a lot of attention, but I thought it was awesome. It's called 0 Day.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he plays like an ex-president, and it's a plot to take over the country using cyber warfare, and he gets like dragged into this conspiracy, and he's amazing in it. And now he's in a movie that I have to see. I think it's just come out, where he plays two different two competing bosses in I think the Lucchese crime family, and it's based on a true story, and he plays each of the rival bosses.
Oh, that sounds really funny.
Yeah.
I could see him playing that up. He would be really, really good at that.
Yeah, like really going back to like his roots in movies like Casino and Godfather, and probably reprising his role in Goodfellas.
Sure.
So that's really cool. I'm looking forward to that. Anything with Tom Hardy in it too. My son and I just think that guy's awesome.
Yeah.
And anything directed by Guy Ritchie.
He's a great director. He kind of is under the radar, but he's directed a lot of really good ones. I'm not that big into movies anymore, but I was when he was doing a lot of stuff, late 90s maybe? Yeah.
Right. So to me, his thing is it's like Quentin Tarantino, where what makes them spectacular is the character development and the use of dialogue. And so Guy Ritchie actually has directed a couple of things for streaming. One is an adaptation of a movie he made called The Gentleman. That's on Amazon Prime, and it's awesome. See it if you can. And there's a new one with Tom Hardy in it, and it's on Paramount. It's called Mobland, and it's directed by Guy Ritchie, and it's like amazing.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
It's really we're about like 2-3 episodes into it because it comes out weekly. But it's Tom Hardy is awesome in it, and you can see the Guy Ritchie in the little dialogues because it'd be like a very tense scene, and all of a sudden they just start talking about something kind of inane and silly, and you're
yes, absolutely.
And so just like when he did Snatch and Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, like it's that those witty dialogues, and The Gentleman too. So the fact that he's making things for streaming, I love that. I hope he makes a ton more of it.
So before we wrap up, and thank you so much for joining us today, what's one myth about therapy or therapists that you want to just dispel right here?
Let me think about that for a second, if you don't mind.
There's so many of them.
Well, I think this. I think that the days of the blank slate therapist are kind of over. And
thank you.
And so when you talk about the evolution of culture and the idea that I'm supposed to be like this kind of like faceless, nameless, like you pulled me out of a closet and I just do this and then you put me back in the closet at the end of the day. I think that those days are over and that it's okay for your therapist to be a real person. I think the use of self-disclosure is okay as long as there's a point to it and it's not for the sake of like being so self-indulgent and about me in some way and using time for that. So I do believe that it's okay for us to be people, and the fact that we have online presence I think is also okay, especially if you utilize this use this platform to provide education. So, and I was thinking, like, because you're a therapist and you do the podcast, I do the same thing. I think that that's okay. I think you can be this. And I've never created anything that's been out there where I would be embarrassed by or where I feel like it negatively impacts my professional image. Even if I present myself in a vulnerable way or a way that's like less than perfect all the time, I let you see that there are flaws that are here and things that I've had to work through. I just don't think it's a problem. And I think that was something that if you said that 20 years ago, you would have been looked at as someone who was unprofessional, had really bad boundaries. At the same time, I think that there are people who take that stuff way too far, where now because you have a little bit of permission, you've just taken off the guardrails completely and they're doing inappropriate stuff. So it's got to be balanced. But back to the point, I don't think you have to be that blank slate anymore. I think it's okay to be a person.
I would agree. And I'm so glad you said that, because I've had very few people who will actually say that. And I say it all the time, but I have a private life that's very private, right? It's not going to be on camera. But I think teenagers especially relate to people who are people.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad you said that. Eric Bricker, thank you so much for joining me today. It was amazing having you. What a great conversation.
Yeah.
There's so much that we could dig into just from the therapy piece, the podcasting piece. I wish you so much success. I know your podcast is crushing it. So, and, all the best to you. And tune in next time for the very next episode of From Mayhem to Mindset with Dr. Laura.
Laura, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, and it was just very easy to do. You made it very easy for me, so I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Eric. Take care.
Thanks for joining us on From Mayhem to Mindset. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave a 5-star review. It really helps spread the message. Want to dive deeper? Check out my book, Wisdom from the Universe, available now on Amazon. And if you're looking for a speaker to inspire and transform, I'd love to connect. Visit www.lauraellick.com to learn more. Remember, you don't have to just survive, you can thrive. See you next time.